Hey there, crafters and stashers. Welcome to the CraftStash podcast. Today's episode, Telling Stories. It's January 16th, 2016. Hey guys, my name is Kim, and I'm recording live from Denver, and every time I say the word live, I remember that you guys are not going to watch it live. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for watching. This is the second episode of the new year, and if you have seen my podcast before, then I don't have to say anything to you because you my peeps. If you haven't seen the podcast before, I try and do this every other week. And I talk about what I'm crafting, what I'm stashing, and then random stuff that's popping into my life. I'm not numbering my podcasts anymore because after 3.5, 4 years of podcasting and losing a lot of my episodes to Blip TV and having my stuff on iTunes and then having it not be on iTunes and now just trying YouTube and Vimeo and kind of going with being wabi-sabi about life, I feel like numbers is too constricting, man. I don't want to deal with numbers. So I'm just gonna date my podcast and let that be it. So who knows if this is episode number 129, which it probably is in theory, but it's just the January 16th, 2016 episode. And that's all I gotta say about that. So today we've got crafting, stashing, some media, what did I call it? Media mix something? Media stuff, and some periphery. So let's get the party started. So for what I'm crafting, I'm getting really crafty, you guys. I have a finished object. I finished Greg's crocheted hat, which I showed you guys in the last episode. It was loosely based on a pattern called the Outlier Toque, which is available on Ravelry. It's a fairly straightforward crochet pattern that uses half double crochets, working out from a concentric circle. The circles are joined and chained up rather than just continuous, something that I am more attuned to now that I'm working on a lot of crochet classes at work, so I'm getting to be a better crochet linguist and kind of getting to be more familiar with crochet terms. So yes, that's important. And I used two really fun fabrics. If you're more really fun fibers, I'm sewing more too, so I'm conflating all of my terminology. So if you're interested in that hat, here's a quick picture of it, and you can take a look at it a little bit more in my last episode. So I finished that. Yay! So that was my finished object, which was awesome. It's nice to have a finished object to show you guys. And the work in progress that I have is a doggy sweater. I got a new dog, or we got a new dog around Thanksgiving of last year. If you're interested in meeting him, please go take a look at the other episode. He might make a sneak peek. Who really knows? If I say his name loudly enough, he will come over here. But I'm making him a dog sweater because we live in Denver and it gets cold. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to go on a little retreat into the mountains with some friends. And I want him to have a doggy sweater because it's going to be freezing up there. So the sweater pattern is the Greyhound. It's a sweater. It's a pattern for greyhounds because they have very streamlined bodies, and I just like the way it looks because it's all ribs, and the closure is the most important thing to me when I was looking at all of these dog sweater patterns. So then, in terms of sewing projects and fabric-based projects, I've got two things. Last week, I want to say, a friend and I went down to Fancy Tiger and we took a leggings class. So leggings and I have an interesting relationship for a very, very, very long time, and sometimes still. I was in the leggings or not pants camp. I have recently, about the last year or so in living in Denver, I wonder if that has anything to do with it, changed my mind, and leggings are totally pants. In my case, if my ass is covered up, then yes, they are totally pants. And we made a pair of leggings, and it was kind of awesome. I liked the pattern that we used because it was basically, it's based loosely on Cal Patch's pattern that is available on the Creative Bug class that she teaches all about leggings. The only adaptation was, I think, to not deal with shrinkage. She has a whole thing where she has you wash your pattern and then add measurements to kind of account for stretch, but figuring that it's a stretch fabric and that over time it's going to loosen up anyway. Our instructor didn't have us pre-wash or pre-shrink them, so that was cool. And she also didn't have us add too much extra because, like she said, most of the fabrics that we were using were really, really thin knit spandex jerseys. They didn't have a ton of spandex in them, so over time they are going to stretch. And it was a fun class because you really have to be body positive to be able to take a class like that, because once you start seeing your measurements splayed out, we were joking, it's kind of looking at a ham hock or looking at a panorama of your leg, as if someone started inside from the crotch, took the time to went all the way around and come back, and you're just like, that's a lot of surface area down there. Like, I already know that I'm a curvy girl, but a lot is happening. So you really have to be comfy with your body. And I think the amount that you end up being really happy with your tights is totally directly proportional to how much you are okay with your body. So I highly recommend either taking the Cow Patch class on Creative Bug, or if you are in downtown Denver, keep your eye open for the next Fancy Tiger class, because they do them all the time. It was really, really fun. So more tights in my future, yay! And then the other thing that I have, I guess it's kind of a work in progress, I made a tutu. Or as I'm supposed to say because I'm an adult, I made a tulle skirt. Here's a quick picture of it. Greg was my Instagram husband a couple of hours ago, and we went outside and did a really crappy photo shoot, but I'm really happy with the pictures because I just wanted to show everyone what my skirt looked like in a practical sense more than how to do it sense. If you just Google DIY tulle skirt or DIY adult tutu, you're going to find a lot of links and tutorials. It's really, really easy. Ultimately, most of them have you making a circle skirt, which is where you just fold your fabric into quarters, cut a slight kind of semicircle for the waist, cut another huge semicircle for the hem. Excuse me. You do the same thing with your lining, your tulle, and then you sew the lining and the tulle together, and then you either have an elastic waistband that you sew them all together, or you have some other waistband mechanism whereby you can either have like a button or a zipper, or depending on how crazy you get, that kind of thing. So I followed this pattern from this blog. Sorry, I don't remember the name, so I can't say it out loud, but I'll flash it on the bottom. And I really liked it because it was super easy, but the finished results looked pretty nice. There's a lot of tulle skirt tutorials that have you do the thing where you cut the tulle into strips and then you loop it around the waistband. That results in a tutu that is like little kid ballerina tutu. It just goes too far out to the sides. I wanted something a little bit more refined and kind of low-key, granted that I'm a grown-ass woman wearing tulle. So I was really looking for one that looked more like a skirt that had a halo around it more than just like yards and yards of tulle. So I was really happy with it. The only mods that I would make is the way that the way that this one blog had you sew the layers together. You had to sew gathers into them and then pull them together. I found another tutorial later on that didn't have you do that, because if you're putting an elastic waistband on this thing, you kind of are going to get gathers naturally when it has to shrink back in to fit you. If you're anything like me where your waist is a totally different ratio than your hips, you'll be fine, because in order for it to be big enough to fit over your hips, it's going to shrink in a lot by the time it goes back down to your waist, so you don't have to worry about that. If you do have the body type that's a little bit straighter, you might want to do the gathers because your hip and waist are going to be the same, so the amount of fabric that you will need to put it over your hips is less, and you won't have that kind of automatic gather effect when it shrinks back in. So that's the tips that I would give. The other thing I wanted to, nope, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's stash. So what am I stashing? So for stash, I'm gonna kind of continue on with the fabric happenings in my world. I don't know if you guys have heard of this website called TextIly. There have been a lot of Ravelry for sewing kind of attempts. Pattern Review is one of the really great ones. It doesn't look like Ravelry at all, but in terms of the depth of information and the amount of activity, that's the closest you're going to find. There's a new startup called TextIly that's trying to get there. It is very, 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 very young. It's very, 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 very new. And I think they'll get there in about a year and a half in terms of like ease of use and the number of people using it. But for right now, it's the best thing I could find in terms of helping me catalog my stash, both patterns and fabric. I won't get into the difficulties of making a Ravelry for sewists, because if you are on either side of that equation, either a fiber person or a fabric person, you kind of know how hard it would be to kind of be able to catalog everyone's patterns and fabric given that a lot of fabric is like random stuff that you find that you don't even know what material it's made of, let alone who made it. TextIly is really centered around, if you really love Amy Butler fabric and all of these different new fabric sewing patterns like Grain Line Studios and Sew Mama Sew and all that stuff, it really is good at kind of having that information already for you, so you can like tag your stuff with it. But like I said, if you go to a Joann's and just buy random gingham fabric, there's no place for you to just say generic gingham. So that's a little aside about why it's not great yet. But like I said, it's really nice to be able to kind of add patterns and add fabric. It's painstaking, but it'll be worth it. So I've recently started using TextIly. If you would like to be my friend, I think my name there is Creole. You can see what I'm stashing, and I'd love to see what your fabric and patterns look like. So stashing, I whittled down my fabric stash. I kind of got rid of stuff that I knew that I was never going to use, whether it was for sewing quilts or for sewing clothing, and that was really cool. I was left with about 12 sewing patterns that I own, and about, how can I quantify the fabric? If it was fiber, I'd say, 15 skeins and about 4 bumps and whatever, but for fabric, I guess I would say I have about 12 different kinds of fabrics in varying yardages, and all of them are, well, I'd say about 30% of them are for clothing and about 70% of them are for quilts. So the things that I'm stashing for sure that I wanted to share with you are a couple of those sewing patterns. I kind of lost my mind last week when I took that leggings class and I bought 2 different patterns. One of them was Anna Maria Horner's portrait dress, which is a really, really cute, very, very kiddish dress that is made kind of in a patchwork style. I liked it because you can use quilting cotton for it, which is, I have tons of that stuff, and you can do a kind of a patchwork effect, which is kind of what I'm looking for. I was looking for ways to use my quilting fabric without having to make quilts because I'm kind of over quilting for the moment. And this pattern lets you do that. You can definitely make it all in one fabric. It would be harder for you because you'd have to kind of cut very specifically in the fabric so that everything looks coordinated. But you could totally do that. But I bought it because I want to be able to make a quilted dress, or a patchwork dress, I should say. The other pattern that I bought was the FummeTerre skirt. I forget the name of the place that, I forget the name of the publisher of the pattern. As I get to be a better sewist, I will remember that stuff. But it's a really awesome, super romantic long skirt. I have this thing with long skirts. When I used to live in New York, I kind of fetishized Orthodox Jewish women a little bit because they always had the most amazing long skirts that kind of just swept the floor but didn't touch the floor, and they seemed to kind of float on air, and it was these beautiful long skirts that fit them very nicely, but not in a sexy Jessica Rabbit kind of way. And it's hard to buy one of those things because it's super custom to your height and your hips, and your waist and all of that stuff. So obviously now that I can sew, I can make my perfect floor length skirt. So I'm really excited about it because this pattern lets you have a version that has pockets, and it kind of has a nipped in waist in the back, which is something that someone like me who has like a 10-inch difference between my hips and my waist super needs. So it fits very, very nicely. So I'm excited about those 2. And then the other thing that I have for stash is this thing that I've got back here. Let's see if I can do a little bit of an artsy tilt so that you guys can see the full thing. I have been saving up for the spindle rack of my dreams for maybe, I've wanted that spindle rack for maybe 3 or 4 years. I got it on Etsy from Deb's Fibers. Deb is one of the more prolific spinners on Ravelry, and I guess she has a small shop where she makes fiber every once in a while, but her big thing is these custom spindle racks that can hold drop spindles and supported spindles. So thanks to an Etsy gift card from a family member over the holidays, I was able to score one. This costs about $90 with another $30 in shipping, so it's definitely an investment. But like I said, I had wanted it for years. I had whittled down my spindle stash to the point where I know I'm not going to buy any more spindles. And I kind of knew the max height of my spindles, the minimum height of my spindles, that kind of thing. And if you convo with Deb, if you're interested, if you convo with Deb, she's really good about giving you information on what kind is best for you, and she can also make you a custom one. So I'm super excited to have that thing because I have not spun since I moved out here. I think I played with the wheel once, and I've like drop spindled for literally maybe 5 minutes every 3 months. So hopefully now that these things are visible and I've got my little fiber stash in the bucket right next to it, my spindle whips will kind of start to get moving again. So yay for stash. So I'm gonna go a little bit out of order and do media last and periphery now. Because for media, I'm gonna do a little bit of storytelling. I've done that every once in a while in my podcasts where I read excerpts from books that I'm reading and love. And I know that that's not everyone's thing, and I'm gonna do a little experimental stuff with it. So I put it last. This way, if it's not your bag, you don't have to worry about it. So for periphery, I wanted to share 2 things. It's so weird to do periphery because it's like I'm such a, my friends know this. Like I turn it off and on. Like I'm either talking about business or spinning or fabric or fiber, or I'm kind of like talking all about myself and I feel really vain. And I just have this really intense guilt about talking about myself, even though I love talking about myself, hence me podcasting. So periphery is always going to be a little bit weird for me. But the 2 things that I wanted to share in a very project management way about my life are that tomorrow I'm having a crafternoon and cocktails. I'm having a couple of friends over, and in the spirit of last week's kind of discussion on my 2016 theme of roots and patience, you know, I've been here a year and I'm slowly but surely making friends. Yay, adult introverts unite. And it's really, really nice because we're going to have a custom signature cocktail. I'm making a lavender hot toddies with either gin or whiskey. And I'm going to teach some of these ladies to knit, and I think one of them already knows how to knit, so it'll be fun. I don't know if we're going to get dressed yet, but a couple of weeks ago, my Facebook feed was kind of thinking about starting a cocktail club where we have cocktail parties like they did back in the day, where you wouldn't, you know, go out to a bar to hang out with your friends. You would get dressed up, bring something to eat or snack or drink, and you would go to your friend's house. Yeah, why are we not doing that more? Like, oh my God. There's a really great, I think it's either BuzzFeed or Huffington Post article about, you know, 9 reasons to bring back the cocktail party at home. And it lists a lot of these really great reasons, like you don't have to pay a cover, there's not a drink minimum, you don't have to worry about getting seated next to a loud party at the bar, or you don't have to worry about being the loud party at the bar. I feel like that's such a great idea. So I'm gonna try and make it happen. But if we start it, I said it had to be called the Cocktail Gang, or it had to have the word gang in it because I didn't want it to be like supper club or whatever. So we're having a crafternoon cocktails tomorrow. So that should be fun. If you're on Instagram, follow me. Maybe we'll be taking pictures. And if you do something similar, I would love to see your pictures too. We should totally start a hashtag, crafternoon cocktails. And the other thing for periphery that I wanted to share is we went snowshoeing a couple of weeks ago. Greg and I have been here for a year. I know I keep saying it. Just because it's around the anniversary of it, I'm going to keep saying it. So sorry if you get annoyed. Hey, pop quiz, how long have I been in Denver? A year. So we went snowshoeing a couple of weeks ago, and it was really, really, really fun. We've been thinking about winter sports for a while, I guess ever since we moved here. Skiing is not my bag because I don't like to be cold and I don't like to go fast. The whole ski bunnies, snow bunny thing afterwards, where you kind of go and hang out in a lodge and have hot alcoholic drinks and be warm and have fun, I could do that all day. But the actual skiing and being fast and falling and breaking shit thing, not so much my speed. So, and I think Greg is totally that kind of person. I think he wants to learn to ski and snowboard, so more power to him. But we tried snowshoeing because it was a way to be kind of active outdoors in the winter without having to have me like break a leg. And it was really, really fun. So if you ever have the opportunity to go snowshoeing, I highly recommend it, even if you do like to ski and snowboard. I didn't get as cold as I thought I would because it's really a lot of work to go trudging through the snow, and you can totally bring a flask. No one should get injured if you're walking slowly through snow while intoxicated, so that's always fun. And there were lots of different places to do it in Colorado, but we went to Breckenridge and we did it at the Golden Run Nordic Center, so a couple of us are going to go back up there in about a month or so to recreate the magic. I might even try to do cross-country skiing because we saw a couple of cross-country skiers as we were going along, and it was really, really fun. All right, so last but not least, we have Media Mix. I think that's what I was calling it. Media Matters, Media Maven, Media. I'm not really sure. So this is the part where I kind of chat about something media-wise that I have been ingesting. So I'm still going to talk about 2 books. I finished this book that I was reading last week or for the last month and a half, When We Were Animals. It's amazing. If you watched the last episode, I was waxing poetic about how kind of dark and semi-goth and just darkly romantic and very, very good for introverts. This is the book that if you happen to be an introverted teen and you read this, it's like perfect. It's not a book for teens, but it totally could be read by teens. So I just wanted to read an excerpt of it because I'm crazy and I like to try new things on the podcast. So here we go. So the part that I'm going to read you is, the main character's name is Lumen. She grows up in a town where for a certain part of their lives, teenagers go through a kind of a coming out period, a rumspringa, whatever you want to call it, where they kind of turn feral for all of the days of the full moon throughout that time of their life. And this girl Lumen thinks she's different because she's the age where everyone's doing it, and she hasn't had the urge yet, and her mother didn't have the urge, and her father, she's like the perfect girl in town, and everyone's a little bit annoyed / afraid of her because of that. So the excerpt I'm going to read you is, Lumen has just finally gone breech, is what they call it when they go feral, and she has gotten into a fight with a boy who is her antagonist, and that same antagonist beat up her boyfriend a couple of nights before. So here we go. And Peter is the boyfriend, Roy is the antagonist. I might have a little bit of beer before I do this. Okay. I went to Peter's house again, and this time he met me at the door. There was a thick wad of white bandages taped to his neck. Stitches, he said. 14 of them. Thanks for the note. I really didn't want to see anyone. In his bedroom, I sat on the edge of his bed, and he swiveled his desk chair to face me. Did you get out last night? He asked. Did you get out last night? I asked. He chuckled a little. Did you ever try not to get out? He said. Where did you go? I went down to the railroad tracks, watched trains go by. I thought about hopping one of them. I asked, what stopped you? I'm not afraid of running away, he said, but I won't run away from him. I said nothing. And he continued, also you. Oh, I said. He looked at me hard, and I blushed. I put my hand to his neck, a mirror image of the place where he had his wound. Does it hurt? I asked. Aches mostly. Can I see? Do you really want to? He asked back. I nodded. He got up from the chair, took off his shirt, and knelt before me. The bandage was right at the base of his neck, where his shoulder began. You do it, he said. With my finger, I tugged at the edge of the tape until the bandage came free. And then I folded it back. The skin was purpled and raw. The laces used to stitch him up blackened with blood, and so tight that they pooched the skin up into bumpy ridges. I ran my fingertips over the raised script of his damage to see what might be read there. I'd never really thought about stitches as being the same kind of stitches as in sewing, but they were. I thought that flesh must be a pliable and rude sort of fabric, difficult to work with. I pictured an old woman with a thimble pushing a long needle through his worsted, pinched-up skin. Our bodies are craft work. I put the bandage back and pressed the tape back into place. He looked up into my eyes, and I thought he was going to say something, but then he thought better of it. Instead, he just leaned forward and pressed his head to my chest. I put my arms around him and stroked his hair. Back at home, I shut the door of my bedroom, leaned against it, listened to the silence of the house, and felt myself jaundiced, yellowed by life. Strangely, I was relieved to be away from Peter Meacham, whom I loved. In school the following day, Polly wanted to talk to me all about her new adult preoccupations. I found excuses to escape her. funny. Now that all these people were talking to me, I wanted nothing to do with them. Was it possible, I wondered, to be out of sync with everyone for the rest of your life? I felt walled up behind bricks, like holy people who were also out of sync. It was called immurement, the practice of walling people up, a fact that I had discovered when I had done my research on saints and anchorites. Even Rose Lincoln seemed more interested in me, now that I had stood up to Black Hat Roy. "Did you do all the rest to him too?" she asked, her eyes dark, bright. It's like the devil got at him. So, I was a devil now. It was no surprise, and the worst kind of devil is the kind that believes itself to be holy, like Satan, the morning light, the angel. One's taste for corruption, it seems, has everything to do with one's memory of goodness. The inversions braid around each other, and it is hard not to fall. So, when I was talking about the book last week, I was kind of talking about how much I love the language of the book. And, I mean, the dialogue is teenage dialogue. And it's always weird for me because as a feminist now in her mid-30s, I'm very aware of what people are portrayed in the media, who's writing for them, are they being written in really stereotypical ways? Are they being written in totally crazy ways? And when guys write for women characters, it's always really, really interesting to me, and I always am kind of listening for and looking for the maleness to come out in their voice. And that didn't really happen with this book, which is great. The author is Joshua Gaylord. The thing that I love the most about this book is what it makes you think about yourself. Because in a nutshell, he's painting the landscape and the picture for you to have all of your stereotypes and prejudices and preconceived notions to come into the characters, and you're kind of waiting to see if he's going to let those stereotypical things happen to them. And without spoiling the book, it's set up for you to think some crazy shit's gonna happen. Like if a bunch of teenagers are going feral every 3 nights of the month, you're expecting certain things to happen. Some of those things do happen, some of those don't. And if the main character is kept apart for so long and then all of a sudden she's introduced into that circle, every single time you read an interaction, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Is the thing that I think is going to happen now going to happen? And it does a lot of interesting things with you as you step back and say, why am I assuming these things are going to happen to this girl? Why am I assuming this girl's going to do these things? So I kind of liked the way that the book made me step back and think about my experience as a reader as much as it did my experience of the characters. And like I said, his writing is absolutely beautiful. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. The book that I'm currently reading now is called An Untamed State. It is by the goddess Roxanne Gay. She's super popular lately, and I like her because she's a fat Haitian girl. Not gonna lie. She wrote the book Bad Feminist, which got really, really good reviews and is pretty popular. It's similar to Mindy Kaling's books, which I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago. And I just cannot read like short essay kind of stories from authors that are just like randomly like, what I think about bubblegum. And they write about bubblegum for 10 pages. I can't really read those kinds of books, and that's what Bad Feminist is. So it was nice to kind of see that she has quite a few other books under her belt, and this Untamed State is about a family where I think either the wife or the husband or both of them are Haitian, and they go back to Haiti, and the wife gets kidnapped, and then who knows what happens from there. So I'm going to read it. I'll let you guys know what I think of it, and that will be that. So thank you guys for spending another, 45, 30 minutes with me this week. I really, really love doing this. I really, really love interacting with you guys. I was supposed to Periscope today. I got a little bit shy and I got cold feet. I was able to watch Juliana, I think her last name is Pacini. She had a Periscope happening right as I was about to Periscope, so I just joined her Periscope instead. But I'll try and do it more often in the future. Please, please, please follow me on Instagram because that's kind of where I'm the most active and chatty and vocal. Find me on Ravelry, that's cool. I don't really hang out there anymore. And Crayoly.com just exists to exist. So hopefully I'll see y'all on Instagram. And if not, you should craft it. And if you can't craft it, you should stash it. Cheers.